Welcome to the Circle of Birth podcast. I'm your host and advocate, Ali Kranz. These podcasts are here to gather stories, people and information to better our understanding of the wisdom of birth and how we can reclaim our connections to birth from conception and beyond. You will hear stories not only from Australia but from all over the world, bringing together women, partners, midwives, doulas and all the people that have a birth story to share. So jump right in for this next Circle of Birth story. So we welcome back Debbie and Melissa from How to Heal a Bad Birth and Birth Talk. Before you begin, have you watched part 1? Go and check out episode 7 before you listen to this show, which is part 2. So this show is all about their journey together. With other amazing women, they brought together Birth Talk, and Debbie and Melissa have recently released the newly published and much needed How to Heal a Bad Birth. So today, while we're not delving too far into birth stories in this episode, we are heading into these crucial topics that need to be talked about and acknowledged and shared. So this episode is really valid, and you'll hear in this show how providing space to heal and acknowledge and sharing stories, you will open yourselves up to many other people's journeys and understand completely that no matter what happened in each other's journey towards birth and beyond, the feelings are there and they're all valid. Listening to these women and reading this book has opened up myself to so many more possibilities, and I just love the contribution that Debbie and Melissa have made. Its intent is true to their feelings and their own personal growth, and Melissa describes her own journey here of how she felt after her first cesarean and finding the path to her transformation. She has gone on to have 2 empowering births and in well-supported and an informed place, and it's just great. And this is what we want to hear about, and please enjoy this episode and share it with love. Okay, thank you, Debbie and Melissa. Welcome to part 2, and thank you for coming back on the show again. Debbie, do you want to kick it off? We're going to head into part 2, and we're going to talk about how Birth Talk came about, and we're going to venture into the book. So take it away.
Okay, thanks, Ali. So I basically, after I birthed my first child, followed by a really challenging postnatal experience, I then started connecting with other mums, as you do, with mothers groups and ABA and neighbours and things, and they started sharing a lot of their birth stories with me, and possibly in greater detail because I was a midwife. So often they'd share and I'd ask a few questions, and then they would share at a much deeper level because they were just trying to make sense of what happened, which is really important step in processing any really intense experience. So and I started realising that, which I already knew beforehand, but even more so, that so many women were having negative experiences, and so much of it I could hear could have been avoided with good information and good support, and a lot of it had to do with system challenges and all sorts of things, and a lot of it was due to also how incredibly vulnerable women are at that time. And I knew that because I'd also experienced birth firsthand, and I couldn't imagine how I would have managed to get through that if I'd been feeling the way that they had been feeling, and just recognised that it made total sense that it, at a vulnerable time when they were feeling lots of emotions, like they were feeling that they were powerless, or that no one was listening to them, or that they were confused, or they were scared, or all sorts of different emotions that come out time and time again. And it was very clear to me that anybody at a vulnerable time feeling that way would be a really negative experience, and it made sense that it would have an impact. But I didn't at that point understand how much impact. I just knew that they were really affected in a bad way by their birth. And so this kept happening, and I just started to say to them, why don't we have a coffee? Because I just felt that if they heard someone else saying exactly the same things as they were, different story, different what happened, but exactly the same feelings, that would be really powerful. It was really powerful for me to hear them, and I just thought they all think that it's just them. They all think that perhaps they're not coping, or they don't understand why it's bothering them, where in fact, it's really quite common. So at the same time, Melissa was also processing her birth, and she'll tell you a bit more about that in a moment. I think Melissa started that process when her son was about 2.5, and that's pretty much about the age gap between our kids, I think. Is that right, Melissa?
That's right, yeah.
Yeah. So it was about that sort of timing, and I knew that Melissa was getting more and more insights into her own story, and so we had a coffee. We had a couple of cups of coffee or tea or whatever we were drinking with breastfeeding mums, and there started to be a little bit of a sharing of a story, and that's when I felt like, wow, I really want these women to be able to be heard in this, but I really want them to have different information and to have different experiences. And that, for me, was the first seed of the idea of supporting them with this in an informal way. And then Melissa and another family friend, Karen, we got together a little bit down the track and formalised it a bit more. But I'll let Melissa talk a bit more about how she came into it.
Great. Hi, Mel.
Hi. Gosh, well, I'm just trying to think about it all in the right order because it was 14 years ago now. But, so after my son was born, I knew that I didn't know that all the things that I were feeling could possibly be connected to the birth. I just knew that I wasn't coping, but I thought I wasn't coping and that other women did cope. And so I was very confused about it and thought, well, yes, I had a bad birth, but, everyone's telling me I should be grateful, and I am grateful, and what's wrong with me? Why can't I just move on? And, obviously Deb never said any of those things to me. She would send little seeds my way that would sort of sit in there and then grow a little bit further. And I sort of started to, understand a little bit more about it when I was, I think my son was 2, and I Googled feelings after a cesarean because I thought that that maybe this was to do with having a cesarean, and I found a website in WA called birthrights.org who had a page on their website called Feelings After a Cesarean, and I read through those feelings and I thought, oh, that's everything I'm feeling. Oh my God, I'm not alone. This is it. This is what I'm feeling, and that was huge for me. And that was sort of the start of me going, okay, well maybe I do need to look into this a bit more. Obviously what I know now is that those feelings are not just felt after a cesarean, and sometimes those feelings aren't even felt after a cesarean because cesareans can be, positive experiences, but most of the feelings that I was feeling were the feelings that Deb was talking about that were coming out amongst the women she was meeting. So of being, powerless and feeling confused during it, but afterwards feeling hypervigilant or feeling lacking confidence in caring for their baby, and feelings of failure and guilt and shame. They were really big ones for me afterwards. So I think starting to realise that there was a reason, and it was because of the birth. And back then I sort of thought it must be because of I'd had a cesarean, but it was a start anyway. It was better than what I'd been doing before, which was saying it must be me. So that was a shift. And I actually started looking into the International Caesarean Awareness Network, which is ICANN, which is an international organisation based mainly in the US, and they have chapters all over America, and that meet, and they're amazing. They do amazing work, and I'd sort of thought initially that I felt like I was getting a lot of support from them online. So you have to remember that this was the days before Facebook, and this was before Instagram, and I don't even know if Google was around back then. So,
Dark ages.
It was. I know. So you couldn't Google. Well, I didn't know the word birth trauma, those two words together as a term. If somebody had said birth trauma to me, I would have thought that it meant when the baby had been injured in the birth, or if the mother had nearly died in the birth, which of course is something that the woman's going to need emotional support for. But that I didn't come under that category because I just had a run of the mill to everybody else cesarean, labour and then a cesarean, and had a healthy baby. So I didn't know. That's why it took me so long to find the information, because it wasn't a well-known term, and it's still not completely well-known now, but a lot of women in the mothers sort of circles do know those terms. So I was getting all this online support from ICANN, and I was really starting to understand the relationship between my experience that I'd had and and the impact of it on me, which was so great. And then, through that, I then started to learn more about birth and sort of went on my own little research journey. And then Deb and I would sit and talk, and I'd be like, oh my God, really? And I thought I knew all about this, but there was obviously big gaps in my antenatal education and my understanding just in life about birth. So so Deb and I were both sort of going on our own little journey separately, and then coming together and talking, and then going off separately. And then we started, I was sort of like, yes, I think we need to have a cesarean group here. And then Deb was sort of saying to me, well, there's women who've had vaginal births who feel like this too. And at first I found that really difficult to take in, because I felt so strongly that if I just had a vaginal birth, it would have all been okay. But now I know that that's not the case at all, that it's all about those feelings during the birth of if you're feeling helpless and confused and abandoned, as I did in my first birth, you can feel that in a vaginal birth as well. And, you need to have the right support there for you emotionally, and be in the right environment for your body to be able to sort of work optimally. I hadn't sort of known all of those things then. So Deb was sort of really strongly saying, no, we need to do, it's not just cesarean. And I was sort of going, okay, all right. So what are we going to do? And then, as Deb said, we had our family friend who'd known Deb and my husband since they were very tiny, and she had was very passionate about being empowered and informed around birth too. So we started to get together and discuss what we were going to do about this. And I actually remember being with Deb and I think Karen and a few of the women I was connecting with some women who were my sort of friends and people I knew that were feeling as though we all needed support. Deb had her own friends, and then we sort of came together. And I remember we went to this rally in King George Square in the centre of the city. Do you remember what the rally was for, Deb?
No, I think it was something about increasing maternity choices or improving maternity care, or might have even been trying to keep the birth centre open. I can't quite remember.
I think it might have been the National Maternity Action Plan or something. Something
maybe.
Women needed better support and better care in maternal health. And I can remember we went along to this rally, with Deb, some of Deb's friends, some of my friends, and some of Karen's. Well, I don't know. Well, I'm pretty sure Karen was there, but we were all meeting. Some of us were meeting there for the first time and standing there listening to. I remember Robin Bailey from. She's from the radio now. I can't remember what she's on, but she's quite well known. And she spoke, and then Dr. Sarah Buckley spoke, and she's an author whose book is called Gentle Birth, Gentle Mothering. Is that right?
Yep, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah, and that was the first time I'd sort of really come into contact much with her. And another woman was getting up, and they were just talking about the importance of the birth experience and birth matters, and women need good support in birth. And I can just remember standing there going, oh, my God, these women think that what happened to me was wrong and it wasn't right. And there's support for this, and there's people there who care about my experience of birth beyond my own little sphere. And I think that was like a week before we had or a couple of weeks before our first birth talk meeting, and I came away from that just with my head spinning, just going, I'm actually not alone in this, or I don't just have this small group. There's lots of people out there who are fighting for us to not have the bad experience and have the positive experiences. And so I think I got even more fired up after that. And
well, it's definitely a resonating feeling, isn't it, to have that awareness now, and that connection too.
Yes, yeah. And connecting with women in the US. Yeah. And who were feeling what I was feeling, and then connecting with women locally, and then seeing it on the biggest scope, because I hadn't really started to look at it from a system point of view in the health system yet much. But so then, we got together, and Deb and Karen and I sat down to plan what we were going to do, what our philosophy was going to be, what our focus was going to be, and
so that really helped you with sort of validating your journey and then other people's journeys too, and then got you straight into birth talk, I suppose, essentially.
I think it was just all part of the puzzle, another piece of the puzzle.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think I remember that rally as well, and it's just so lovely to be surrounded by a whole bunch of people who are very passionate about good stuff. But I think back then there was still very little concept, as Melissa was saying, about birth trauma or the impact of birth. It was more there was a lot of people out there who knew that birth was important, and they knew that with certain models of care that often there was higher satisfaction, and so it was more a huge push for getting more continuity of care and getting more midwifery models of care, and all these different models, which are really valuable, and there's lots of research to back all of that. But at the same time, I was feeling a little bit that it's having a different model of care is not gonna fix it. It's not just a model of care. It's we need to take it back even further. It's not that, like as Melissa was saying, she was feeling, it was because it was a cesarean. I was going, it's not because it's a cesarean. It's because people feeling those feelings at an incredibly vulnerable time in any point in life, that would be traumatic. And the same with the model of care was sort of like, well, that's a good step, but we need to take it back and say, how can we make sure that women are feeling different things? They need different information, they need different support, and whatever model of care we get, if we have somebody come into that room who doesn't understand that, or a situation arises and they lose sight of that, and amongst other important things that they're watching, we're still going to have the same issue. So whilst I was really excited, I was also feeling like people are not taking it back far enough. They're thinking that if we change a model of care, or if we have a home birth, or if we have a birth centre birth, or if we have a whatever birth, it'll be all right. And I was just so clear in my mind, no, it won't. It's more than that. We need to really recognise every woman is an individual, and give her information and let her make her choices, whether that be an elective cesarean or a home birth. And those choices need to be made on information and not fear, And we need to make sure that during her birth she's feeling safe and supported and cared for and all these things, and then her birth will work better. And then, like from my own experience, even when it doesn't go to the plan that you want, she will come out better prepared for motherhood, and she will come out positive and confident. And so I think that's why I kept sort of going. Melissa kept, like, it was a little bit frustrating for you, I think, because I just kept saying no with the cesarean thing, and that sticks out with the rally as well, that I was like, these are all good steps, but until we get back to those basics and treating every single woman as this is her life experience, and we need to really do everything we can to empathise and have an awareness of how she's feeling and do everything we can to support that, then everything else will flow after that.
Very well said. Just that
anyway,
pure acknowledgement. So then from that, how did Birth Talk eventuate? Did it take off straight away, or did you sort of stick to your core group and then word of mouth tended to happen after that?
Well, a bit of both. I think we sat down and really thought about what our aims, and as you can hear, we debated all that a little bit, what our mission statement would be, etc. And then we just said, let's just have a meeting, and that's how it started, just with that core group. And then I think people just would hear and join in, and I think we stuck some pamphlets around the place, didn't we, Melissa? Are you there?
Oh, yes. So I'm thinking, because it's so long. Yes, we had the meetings to think about how we were going to what we were going to do, and our philosophy and how we were going to run it. But we did have we had Holly draw up some brochures, and
yes.
I drove around and stuck them in every childcare centre that I could think of.
Yeah, so shopping centres and
yoga places and homeopaths and anywhere where we knew young mothers with young babies would be.
Great.
And it is
and it still remains a free service, isn't it, for people? That's how it was initially set up. So it's
yes.
The healing from birth meetings are always free.
Yeah.
Yes.
And that's what we started with, and that they are always free, because we don't want to limit a woman's access to this support, because we can see how it changes them and changes families. It's just too important.
And has it transformed you guys, looking back then to when it started to where you are now? Have you had a lot of transformation in your own journeys with Birth Talk?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the foundations of what we're based on, like, I knew all that, but it just getting clearer and clearer. But I just did not fathom at that point the impact that it had. I knew it had an impact, and it made sense that it had an impact, but the ripple-on effect of a good birth I knew, but the ripple-on effect of a bad birth was so much more far-reaching and so much more intense than I had, or intense or significant. I can't quite find the right word. That's not it either. But it was much more far-reaching and just huge, I guess, than I had realised. So, we would have women coming to meetings, and they'd tell their story, and I'd just think, oh my gosh, this is just so damaging, and that ripple just filters out, so it's so far-reaching. So that my eyes got open to that more and more along the way, and even occasionally, I mean, we've been doing it for 14 years, but even years down the track, there'd be still times that Melissa and I would walk out and just go, holy moly, that's just, beyond what we had comprehended before. So.
Yeah. I feel like that it's this ongoing process of learning more and learning more and learning more, and I think that's really good and healthy, because we're always, I think it's really good that there's always something new to learn and always something new insight to gain. And sometimes it's insights about birth, sometimes it's insights about ourselves. And, so we reflect on the meetings and we reflect on all different things. And obviously I've come a long way since I thought that caesarean was the only sort of bad birth. And I also thought that all caesareans must be bad. So I've come a long way since then.
I think,
yeah.
I was going to say the other area that's just sort of popped in my mind as well is, Ali, when we started Birth Talk, we had healing meetings and we had what we called forums, education forums, because it became really obvious that there was gaps in the neonatal education. Women, the two most common things we'd hear about from women when we were sharing information with them was, why didn't anyone tell us this? Or I never thought they'd do anything that, wouldn't be in my best interest. And so it was really clear that there was gaps in education about, let's tell you the things that other people aren't telling you that are going to really help with your confidence and help your birth to go a lot better. And let's also tell you about how the system works and what the effects of our culture and our life story, how that can come into play. So you have an understanding that it's not that you need to blindly trust every person you come across, but it's not that they're your enemy either. So we had these forums, and I think we knew back then that I certainly knew, being lucky enough to go to birth, that it just worked better under certain conditions, and it was incredibly valuable, and all the hormone and all the physiological stuff. But at that point, there wasn't a great deal of information about that. It was still a lot of midwives would just say, oh, you can feel it, or you can see it, or you'd see how the difference postnatally would pan out. But a lot of the work of Michelle O'Donnell and then Sarah Buckley started coming through about around then too. So that was really wonderful to actually join those dots that were they were already there, and then just joining them with really good scientific information, which is so powerful to women making sense of what happened, why their bodies behaved the way they did, and how a birth can be impacted upon negatively, and how it can be supported, how our bodies can be supported to work really well as well. So there's a lot of learning along that line as well.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Definitely, and it's in a sense, like as Melissa was saying before, there is no final endpoint in the journey there. It's always going to be transforming and progressing and always changing. And I think, it's just so perfect what you've set up, and I hope to achieve the same from this project, is the more stories that we hear and embrace and acknowledge, the more we can come together, because it's those feelings, like you said, Deb, that bring us together. And if we acknowledge and accept those feelings together, then I'm sure we can move and shake and do great things into the consciousness of what's going on for birth, especially.
Absolutely.
So after Birth Talk, so the book, let's get into the book. So the Birth Talk meetings and, your guys' journey and your transformation, and then who decided let's do a book? How did that come about?
Well, I think it was probably more... I think it's probably more Melissa's idea initially, but I think it was becoming evident. Well, firstly, we were having women coming from a very long distance. We're having women coming from Byron Bay, Armidale, Toowoomba, Hervey Bay to Brisbane, Gympie,
Wow.
Because there just wasn't anything else like us. And then we were also having lots of health professionals contacting us and saying, we want to start a group here. Can we start a group? And we were like, that's fantastic. You want to support women. But it was really, really difficult, the idea of how can I tell you in a 2-hour conversation what we think you need to know to start a group, and women are so vulnerable, and as you can see sometimes on those forums, sometimes there can be really well-meaning damage done as well. So we really wanted to make sure that we just wanted to support women further afield and support people who wanted to support women. And
we also had women coming to the meetings who were saying to us at the end of the meetings,
"Give me some stuff." Yeah,
I want to do something between the meetings, and I can't remember what you said. And often, they can't write they're not writing down during it because they're too busy being in the moment, which is great. Mm-hmm. And they were saying, I want something to work on, and we would give them little things to work on and send them little emails, but that's when the idea sort of really came into, for me, was just like, oh, we've got all these people wanting this information,
and we were doing more articles and blog posts, and because there was also that desire to increase awareness, because there was a lot of people who, as Melissa was saying earlier, that it was still very foreign to a lot of people, and a lot of women were inadvertently getting further unacknowledged, I suppose, or there was that, and there still is that whole healthy mother, healthy baby thing going around, and we really wanted to increase awareness and give the women who had experienced birth trauma, as well as people around them, the language to be able to discuss it in a safe way and to understand it more, I guess, as well. So I think increasing awareness, supporting women and supporting others to support women elsewhere, because there's only so much you can do. And it just, for me, it just feels like just so exciting to have all those things we've been doing for so long, just all in one spot that we can share and feel like it's shared in a way that is helpful and is safe for women and helpful for those who want to support them, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. And it kicks off beautifully, the first sort of segment of the book. Just sort of, you delve straight into a birth talk meeting, and just reading that straight away, I felt like I was there and a part of it. So it's really engaging. And one of the chapters that resonated with me was Painful Past Inherited Birth, I think it was called, where for me, my understanding of birth didn't come from very much. I know my mum had some really traumatic experiences, and then I was born. So I never got told much about birth, and I had not much of an understanding, and I don't think a lot of people did talk about it. Mm-hmm. So it's those inherited beliefs that you come through with in what birth is really shapes, I think, too, what you're going into with your own journey. So it's good to see that shift, and there's stuff here, and there's people talking, and then it's happening that where we can shape that paradigm into something really beautiful, where we honour birth of how wonderful it can be, because there's some pretty crazy publications out there, that's for sure, of what we're told or perceived of what birth is. So so with that, the book spent, how long have you had the book out for?
3 months.
3 months.
3 months.
Yeah. And it's perfect for, too, I think we discussed probably in part 1, for people that are choosing not to have further children. You have a fair bit of information on to help people in that journey too.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. We keep saying you don't need to have another birth to heal. We have women who come to us heavily pregnant who are saying, what do I do? I haven't got time to heal from the previous birth now. We'll say, well, let's talk about it a little bit, and so you can understand what happened last time. Let's get some tools and things, some education for you for this upcoming birth. And, Deb's supported women who've come to us at like 38 weeks, was it, Deb?
Yeah, yes. Day before, even.
Day before.
But I think
no time for them to work through much.
Yeah. But as you were saying, Ali, we've also got a chapter called, what if I finish my family? Still, can I still heal, and why take the healing journey? And about just making peace of it and getting the intensity of it, reducing the intensity of it, and just be able to come back to yourself in a better place, and to your partners and your families, and just because the women deserve just to feel happy and not be carrying around this burden that often gets kind of buried and just kept under check, but then often you might go to a barbecue and have a few wines and it spurts out, or when their children have children, all of a sudden, like you were talking about your birth legacy, all of a sudden it's going to come up. And we have had grandmothers coming along for that reason as well to meetings. So absolutely, we've had lots of women who just found it really incredibly beneficial for themselves, whether they're going to have more children or not.
And that too, that feeling, and I know a handful of people that have admittedly said that they feel like they have to have another baby to heal their last birth, which they don't want to do.
We don't find that to be the case. I mean, Melissa, do you want to share with yours? You often say that you didn't feel like you needed to heal with your second, or it was validating, or...
Yeah, well, I think it was really important to me that my second birth wasn't to heal the first birth, because I felt that would put too much pressure on this birth and this baby. So I felt like I was lucky enough to have, done most of my healing before I was pregnant with my second baby. There's 4.5 years between them. And then when I became pregnant, new things came up to deal with. But by then I had the tools from working on the healing of my birth that I'd been using, the tools that are in the book, that those tools then allowed me to work on the other stuff that came up during pregnancy. So that this birth was really it was affirming of everything that I now knew about birth and about healing and about women, and because I think that was really important to me, to take that pressure off the birth.
Can I just elaborate on that? My journey, and this just really excites me, and this is why I'm excited about your book, and I'm so excited about Birth Talk. And this was my exact journey with my second birth. Things came up, but I was able to look at them because I created a lot of healing around that before, and I was able to look at them in a much better light than I would have if I didn't address that. And I think that journey, it made it so much easier. Like you said, Melissa, that it's those tools that I had there to go to address it and acknowledge it, and then move on quickly, because even just right before labour, stuff came up, and it was really interesting. Yeah, great.
And I think I was going to say, sorry.
Yeah. You go, Deb.
Okay, I was just going to say, we also have a lot of women who find that they might have they may have done a lot of healing prior to and then during, and then they may have a positive birth, and then that brings up some more grief or some more healing to do about the previous birth as well. So that's not uncommon as well.
That's true. And I think that journey, I think it's being mindful that pregnancy and birth for many women, I know for me, is an emotional journey, and acknowledging that and acknowledging what comes up. And you don't have to go right deeply into it, but just acknowledging it and addressing it where it needs to be addressed, and supporting yourself through that to get to the space where you're ready to birth, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. It's just fantastic what you guys have done, and I'm completely, just from my own personal experience and my own journey, and it's just really sitting with me beautifully. And I just think your contribution from that rally, then from Birth Talk, and then just sharing feelings and acknowledging that it's what a journey. And I look at I'll put a link on in part 2 to the video. It makes me get teary each time. It's just, I think it's that part where you see the women's faces at the beginning, and then at the end, when it sort of heads into the second part of your intro video to the book. It's just that was me, that was me in the second birth. It's that beautiful face looking up at the sky, and
Yes.
And I think that's
that hope, I think.
Yeah. And I think that's, I had someone say to me the other day, it must be so hard what you do. And I just said, absolutely not, because it's that video. It's watching people go from that in the beginning of the video, Ali, as you said, to the end. It's just incredibly rewarding and uplifting, and women are really amazing.
Exactly. You've provided the foundational space there for this to happen. And I think... Is there any chance of, in the future, I was thinking about this, for Birth Talk to go interstate in Australia, to sort of branch out? And
I think we're trying to promote and get the book out and about first, but I think there's definitely possibility of perhaps doing workshops around the place with those people who do want to set up similar groups, and maybe setting up different healing groups around the country, using the book, and then also perhaps doing some workshops and being able to hopefully support women in a really similar way, and around across the country would be amazing, and really something that we'd love to see.
Great. So watch this space.
Yes.
Well, I'll keep in touch with you guys about that, because that's something I'd definitely love to explore.
Oh, fantastic.
Okay, thank you. Much appreciated. It was a great chat again. Thank you for contributing your time to come on here.
Thanks, Ali.
Okay, Thank you. Did you connect with this episode? Then head over to our website, circleofbirth.com. There you'll find show notes, pictures, resources, and potentially connect with today's storyteller. Don't forget to sign up to be updated with new empowering episodes and content. Help the show grow by contributing a tip in the jar to make sure we can continue to better the podcast and connect more and more to the wisdom of birth and each other. Hey, and don't forget the iTunes rating. This has been another episode of the Birth Share Project. We breathe, we birth, we empower.